Hello again, and welcome back to year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 25, day 1. We're continuing our way through the book of First Kingdoms. Last time we saw David finally flee from Saul, having learned with Jonathan's help that Saul was indeed determined to kill him. He left Jonathan after they promised to remain friends, loyal to one another, with Jonathan especially acknowledging David as the one who would be king, and asking David to show mercy to his children in the time to come. This time we will see David begin to be on the run, and what will come of the matter. So this is chapter 21. David came to Nob, to the priest Ahimelech. Ahimelech came trembling to meet David, and said to him, "Why are you alone, and no one with you?" David said to the priest Ahimelech, "The king has charged me with a matter, and said to me, 'No one must know anything of the matter about which I send you, and with which I have charged you. I have made an appointment with the young men for such and such a place. Now then, what have you at hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever is here." The priest answered David, "I have no ordinary bread at hand, only holy bread, provided that the young men have kept themselves from women." David answered the priest, "Indeed, women have been kept from us as always when I go on an expedition. The vessels of the young men are holy even when it is a common journey. How much more today will their vessels be holy?" So the priest gave him the holy bread, for there was no bread there except the bread of the presence, which is removed from before the Lord to be replaced by hot bread on the day it is taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord. His name was Doeg the Edomite, the chief of Saul's shepherds. David said to Ahimelech, "Is there no spear or sword here with you? I did not bring my sword or my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste." The priest said, "The sword of Goliath, the Philistine whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you will take it, for there is none here except that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." David rose and fled that day from Saul. He went to King Achish of Gath. The servants of Achish said to him, "Is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing to one another of him in dances, and say, 'Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s'?" David took these words to heart, and was very much afraid of King Achish of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them. He pretended to be mad when in their presence. He scratched marks on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look, you see the man is mad. Why then have you brought him to me? Do I lack madmen, that you have brought this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house?" David left there, and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and all his father's house heard of it, they went down there to him. Everyone who was in distress, and everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him, and he became captain over them. Those who were with him numbered about 400. David went from there to Mizpah of Moab. He said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and mother come to you until I know what God will do for me." He left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. Then the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not remain in the stronghold, leave, and go into the land of Judah." So David left, and went into the forest of Hereth. Saul heard that David and those who were with him had been located. Saul was sitting at Gibeah, under the tamarisk tree on the height, with his spear in his hand, and all his servants were standing around him. Saul said to his servants who stood around him, "Hear now, you Benjaminites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why all of you have conspired against me? No one discloses to me when my son makes a league with the son of Jesse. None of you is sorry for me, or discloses to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me, to lie in wait, as he is doing today." Doeg the Edomite, who was in charge of Saul's shepherds, answered, "I saw the son of Jesse coming to Nob, to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub. He inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine." The king sent for the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and for all his father's house. The priests who were at Nob, and all of them came to the king. Saul said, "Listen now, son of Ahitub." He answered, "Here I am, my lord." Saul said to him, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, by giving him bread and a sword, and by inquiring of God for him, so that he has risen against me to lie in wait, as he is doing today? Then Ahimelech answered the king, Who among all your servants is so faithful as David? He is the king's son-in-law, and is quick to do your bidding, and is honored in your house. Is today the first time that I have inquired of God for him? By no means. Do not let the king impute anything to his servant or to any member of my father's house, for your servant has known nothing of all this, much or little. The king said, You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house. The king said to the guard who stood around him, Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand also is with David. They knew that he fled, and did not disclose it to me. But the servants of the king would not raise their hand to attack the priests of the Lord. Then the king said to Doeg, You, Doeg, turn and attack the priests. Doeg the Edomite turned and attacked the priests. On that day he killed 85 who wore the linen ephod. Nob, the city of the priests, he put to the sword. Men and women, children and infants, oxen, donkeys, and sheep he put to the sword. But one of the sons of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. David said to Abiathar, I knew on that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I am responsible for the lives of all your father's house. Stay with me and do not be afraid, for the one who seeks my life seeks your life. You will be safe with me. So, what do we see here? Saul had been anointed by God to protect and uphold and bring peace for God's people, to set the kingdom in order, to make all things right, to defend them against their enemies. And he had done so. He had done so alone. He had done so with his sons. He had done so with the armies that he had established. And he had done so with David. Even after he lost God's favor, God sent him David, and the kingdom was sustained. Now, as Saul gives himself over to evil, instead of defending his people against enemies outside, he has become their enemy inside. He has become the enemy even of the priests of God, who knew nothing of they didn't know that David was running away from Saul. They didn't know Saul intended to kill David. They know that David intends nothing against Saul, because that's true. And for this, for helping the servant of the king, as far as they know, now they have been annihilated. We see David helpless in the face of this hatred. We see him knowing what is likely to come, but what is he to do? He doesn't know that Doeg is there right away, as he is. It seems that he notices Doeg as he's taking the bread, as he's taking the sword. He says, uh-oh, that's going to end poorly. But what can he say? If he tells Ahimelech, it only makes it more likely that Ahimelech then will know. And it will take away from that possibility that the king will discern his honesty and his truth and saying, I knew nothing of this. How could I possibly know? So, we see David immediately followed by many people who have been treated poorly. So we're seeing that where Saul has failed, in fact, to bring justice to the land, that there are men who are unjustly, as it seems, in debt or in distress, or who aren't happy, and so that's kind of the other piece of this. These aren't all the best people, probably. Some of these are perhaps even justly criminals who have fled from Saul, and yet they find a second chance with David. So David is now bringing even redemption to those who have been outcast. He's doing the work of a king. He's setting things back in order. He's defending and caring for his parents. Um, but we see David kind of, first of all, he's acting in desperation. He runs, first of all, directly to Saul's enemies. He runs to the Philistines thinking, well, they don't like Saul, and Saul doesn't like me, so the enemy of my enemy is my friend? And they're like, oh, you're the one who's been killing us. So he's like, I have made a big mistake. So he has to act like a madman to escape alive. So anyway, we see a lot of things going on here. We see the breakdown of Saul's kingdom coming in this passage. And it's sad because none of this needs to happen. The other thing that's important is we see the priest here give to David the bread of the presence, the showbread that is baked each day and placed in the altar, and then at the end of each day it is distributed among the priests and they eat it because it's holy. It's not supposed to be eaten by anyone else, but what we see here is as I've seen another priest put it, that there are very few laws in the Torah that are higher than care for human beings. So just because the bread is holy does not mean that it is to be denied to those who need it. What Ahimelech says is at least it needs to be eaten by those who have purified themselves. And David says, no problem. Because the young men that he's supposedly taking it to are a fiction. He's not going to meet his soldiers. He's running away by himself. And he has kept himself pure. This is what the Lord is talking about. The Lord takes this as an example. When the Pharisees are criticizing his disciples for plucking the heads of grain in the Gospels, I think in the early chapters of Mark, maybe Mark chapter 2, and Jesus says, never mind it's the Sabbath, they're hungry. If people are hungry, they should eat. It's not a sin for them to eat. We see this upheld, and then he gives this example, saying if the priest gave to David the showbread, which is not lawful for anyone but the priests to eat, because David was hungry, then there's no harm, no breaking of the law here for my disciples who have plucked a few grains as they walk through the field and have eaten and chewed on the grains. So this is the passage that Jesus is referring to. Anyway, with that, God bless you all. We'll see you all next time for the day 2 reading. God bless you.